Welcome to APG Pathshala. Today we are going to discuss the module Religion and Morality in the paper Philosophy of Religion. And this module is written by Bhaskar Jitniyog of Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. I am Raghuram Raju from University of Hyderabad. Religion and morality are two major institutions that comprised a broad purview of human existence and the everyday life of human being. Both of them contributed to the growth and evolution of human being. Morality is more an informal institution that constantly guides human beings how they ought to conduct their affairs and how to lead a decent life. It also tells us what we are and what are our duties and what are our obligations towards both ourselves and towards others. So that constitutes the domain of morality. Likewise, religion also plays an important role in our life. It gives us a set of beliefs and practices and to conduct our day-to-day dealings. It also informs us about our social relationships, and it gives us, more importantly, the normative package of what is a good way of following a rule, how does one conduct oneself to others, and things like that. So it also gives us important guidance and discipline, and also provides us the purpose of human existence. So the question that we need to ask in that context is morality necessarily dependent on religion? Could there be any morality without religion? Does religion make us more moral? Do moral inclinations arise independent of religious inclinations? And more importantly, would religion survive in the absence of morality? These are some of the fundamental questions that have traditionally engaged philosophers in understanding the relation between religion and morality. This not only preoccupied the attention of theologians and philosophers, but also many others, including ordinary people and other professionals. So this module is an attempt to provide a comprehensive analysis of the sources of the significance of these questions and the possibility of coming up different kinds of answers. Focusing our analysis on some of the prominent questions, both ancient and modern, in this module we will try to unpack certain conceptual issues that are closely associated with these institutions, and this will be done with special reference to analytical philosophical tradition. One way to start discussing on the relation between morality and religion is to go back to the famous dialogue of Plato called Euthyphro, where a question is posed regarding the primacy of religion or morality. Euthyphro asks this question to Socrates: why should we accept pity, and what is the nature of pity? And Euthyphro, in this debate, comes up with this incident in his own life. This debate is framed by Euthyphro's views on the prosecution of his own father for the death of a worker. His own father, Euthyphro's own father, was persecuted because of the death of a worker. So when he asks Socrates, why should we accept pity? And Euthyphro answers saying that pity is something that makes gods happy. So according to Vidya-mitra, pious things are those that are pleasing to gods. So Socrates, as usual in all his dialogues of Plato, asks this surprising question by asking, are pious things pious because they are loved by God, or do God love them because they are pious? This is a very fundamental question. If you look at this, you will find prima facie the question presents a worrisome dilemma for the theist, in that he has to accept that either things get to be pious entirely by virtue of being willed or commanded by the gods, or things get to be pious without being dependent on the God's will and commands. So dependency of pious things on the God's will, we seem to face a unique problem which is called as the problem of arbitrariness. According to this problem, a theist cannot be justified in saying that what is good or bad is ultimately dependent on the God's will and opinion. If morality is dependent on God's decision on what to command, then his decision on what to command cannot be, logically speaking, informed by any source other than him. If moral actions are good because they are commanded by God, then it must be the case that they were commanded by God before they became really morally good. So from this it seems that God may have to decide what to command and what not to command in a vacuum, where there is no rational basis. That's after he commands, they become good, not because they were good, that's why he commands them. So in such a situation, there would be no moral reason for God to prefer fidelity over adultery, generosity over selfishness. He could command anything, anytime, depending upon his whims. So this amounts to arbitrariness. In other words, God would not be concerned about what is good and what is bad, independent of their being good or bad. And this is absurd. It goes against our intuitive understanding of the morality. Morality cannot be located in any form of arbitrariness. Such arbitrariness is of God's creation or the creation of any divine entity. So if God really intends to do something like this, he would simply stop being God to us. So this tempts us to consider the second dilemma. The second dilemma suggests that moral matters are metaphysically prior to God's wills and commands. Good things or pious things have an existence independent of God, and they do not require any approval or disapproval by him. So it suggests that there is something beyond God that is the moral domain, and this something is important. In fact, one could say that God chooses that thing because it is good, not that it becomes good because God chooses that particular thing. So this view is strongly supported by Plato and Socrates in Euthyphro, and many other philosophers subsequently, like the theologian like Averroes of the 11th century, have endorsed this view. However, this is also highly problematic, or as there are many compelling issues that create problems for the theist. One of the major issues that the supporters of this view have to handle is the problem of sovereignty of the supreme being. This problem suggests that if moral standards are independent of God, then it is clear that there is something over which God is not really sovereign. So God is bounded by this something instead of being the creator himself. So in other words, God is in a way dependent on this something in order to retain his godly qualities. So the first dilemma is called voluntarism. Voluntarism refers to the metaphysical dependency of morality on God and religion. According to this, the moral value of a property or a person consists in God's attitudes. Whereas the second dilemma represent is called the naturalism. Naturalism is a view that suggests that moral requirements are not constituted by God's will or commands. So let us now look at the issue called, is morality dependent on religion, and find out what are the consequences of answering in positive or a negative sign. So far, our analysis of the Euthyphro dilemma has presupposed that religion is, by definition, an institution that is intrinsically connected to a supra-individual. But one wonders, what about those numerous religions in the world that do not owe any strong allegiance to the authority of any supernatural power? They might just say that we are religious and we may not believe in the supernatural power. And there can be religions, there are religions who argue this. So, this is something which is in addition to what we already discussed, in Euthyphro. There are others who argue that there is no necessary relation between morality and religion. They would say that morality can be independent of it. First, one could start by suggesting that religion is based on our natural temperament. There are a large group of people on this earth who do not have any inclination towards any religious activity. This includes rationalists and atheists who do not believe in God but believe in morality. Secondly, if morality is thought to be dependent on religion, we will have to resolve a different kind of practical problem. This problem is of identifying and naming the right kind of religion or religions on which moralities came to be dependent. Who is the person who will decide what is a moral agent? But how would we judge among so many living religious traditions as to which religion has an actual impact on our moral system? Probably here one could get rid of this problem by biting the bullet, which is resisting the very idea of there being a single moral system. So one could, for instance, say that there is not just one single religion, there are several religions and there are several moralities. But there are varieties of moralities with different religious backgrounds, each maintaining its own uniqueness by being loyal to a particular sect or sects of religious ideas and practices. However, this otherwise popular commonsensical claim is difficult to defend because it can lead to the diversity. This pluralism can become unwieldy. It can even relapse into chaotic situation. The other important limitations of religion is, in the contemporary societies, we have instances in the liberal democracy that religion is considered not as an institution that prevails on every aspect of human existence, because they believe that it's a matter of individual choice, and state cannot force anybody to propagate a religion or to embrace a religion. So you have, for instance, religion becoming a personal affair, and then on the contrary, morality remains as a public matter. Individuals do not and cannot have any free choice over the applicability of moral norms. So morality, you cannot choose morality, you have to practice morality that is given to you, because morality is not individual centric. morality might contribute to the individual interest, but morality is not chosen by individuals. But in modern times, you have this facility where individuals can choose whether they want to practice religion or not, and more importantly, what religion to practice and what religion not to practice is now remains at the level of individual choice. Modern states have developed different mechanisms, including laws and independent judicial systems, which have nothing to do with religion. So besides, in the modern democracies, one always opts out of religion, as I mentioned earlier, and they can say that we are not interested in religion, but somebody must say that we are interested in practicing religion. Now, in both the cases, it is relegated to the individual choice. So thus, gradually, you see a tendency where post-enlightenment, morality becomes independent of religion, and religion is relegated to the domain of the personal choice of individuals. While this is true about the moral societies, there are several aspects of human existence, 7 aspects of social institutions, which still accept the divine command theory or the natural traditions that show that the legitimacy of our moral truth cannot be entirely stripped off from the authority of God. So let us now look at morality and the question of God. Okay. Virtually all religious traditions across the globe offer certain moral codes and conducts in their doctrinal practices. They prescribe these codes as the necessary prerequisites for the understanding of their metaphysical and epistemological doctrines. This invocation of morality through religious beliefs and practices, as found in different traditions, require us to presume that morality is necessarily dependent on religion and religious activities. Historically speaking, there are 2 prominent figures who have answered this question affirmatively, and they are Immanuel Kant and John Henry Newman. Both of them advocated a particular argument called the moral or practical argument for the existence of God. Kant held that morality is embedded in pure practical reason, and that every agent must, in accordance with certain maxioms, which can be endorsed rationally as universal principles. According to Kant, like any other action, moral actions are also necessarily aimed at ends, and this end is the end of achieving the highest good, or the summa bonum, which consists of the world in which moral agents are both equally morally virtuous and happy at the same time. It is a state where human beings can think of combining moral virtues with individual happiness, or where human beings, individuals' happiness is proportional to their moral virtues. However, according to Kant, an ordinary moral agent cannot rationally afford to will such an end without believing that some moral actions are indeed efficacious enough to be successful in achieving such an end. So, and thus the moral agent is required to believe that the causal structure of nature is actually contributory to the achievement of this end by moral ends. This belief is equivalent to the belief in a supreme being who is finally responsible for the nature of the natural world. So Kant holds that a moral agent must need to postulate the existence of God as a rational presupposition of our moral life. The problem with this sort of formulation by Kant is that it tries to solve a meta-ethical problem by unnecessarily bringing through the back door the idea of God. So analyzing this flaw of this argument, Linda Zebisky puts it quite accurately when she says that what is bothersome about the argument is that Kant himself creates a problem by value theory and then argues that there must be a God to solve the problem. Following a similar line of thought, John Newman, a 19th century cardinal, argues that phenomenology of our moral standing or moral judgment suggests that there must be a supreme judge or ruler who is responsible for everything. So Newman argument from conscience can be presented as follows. He says, conscience points to a supreme governor, a judge, holy, just, powerful, all-seeing, retributive. Conscience is a natural faculty like reason or memory. It is reasonable to trust our natural faculties in the absence of compelling reasons for God doubting them. It is thus reasonable to trust consciousness and consequently believe that there really is a master or judge. The question of whether or not morality has any role to play in determining the status of religion is a difficult one. Here, we have tried to conceptually investigate this relationship with the help of two different versions of the moral argument for the existence of God. The mute question that we can ask at this juncture is, does religion promote morality? Is it possible to be a moral being without religion? That's a very important question that we can ask. The answer is difficult, though we can find instances in modern life which is largely governed by individual decisions, and there is very little role that religion contributes in the modern moral life. But the problem is, if you wanted to really see the limits of modern life that is governed not by religion but by individual decisions, and ask larger questions of why should one lead a life that one is leading. Now, modern life will have very empirical and disworldly teleological answers. Modern life will say that I am doing this because I want to be happy. Now, suppose you ask the question, is there something beyond being happy that constitutes your life? The answers are very weak within the non-religious modern life. So it is in this context, many people see that religion can provide a teleological argument for the purpose of life. Why do I live? I live because of these things. Okay, so that is there is a new opening that is possible within the modern life or the fallouts of modern life, where religion can come back and then give, even in a limited way, a purpose to the life. Let us summarize this module by pointing out the following. The relationship between religion and morality is a fascinating topic. The present module attempted to philosophically analyze this relationship by engaging in certain pressing conceptual issues. It dealt with questions such as whether or not our moral beliefs are necessarily shaped by our religious beliefs and practices. Is morality prior to religion? Could there be any morality without religion? And more importantly, does religion necessarily make us morally better persons? The discussion showed that even though religion is closely associated with morality and moral principles, their relationship is not mutually exclusive. Religious institutions, though not really intrinsically dependent on morality, must have to subscribe to certain basic human values if they want to remain relevant in modern context. Morality, on the other hand, has its own autonomous existence, and thus it will remain relevant as long as there is humanity, even if the whole world ceases to believe in religious doctrines and practices. Nevertheless, it must be noted that there is a well-established philosophical discourse called religious ethics, distinct from secular non-theistic ethics, which exclusively discusses the possibility of ethics within the bounds of different religious traditions. This discourse comprises of the normative systems of numerous religious traditions such as Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, and others, which are living traditions even today, despite lot of modern life, advent of modernity, developments in science and technology, and things like that. So thus we have looked at the relation between religion and morality in this module. Thank you.